What's up guys, my name is Doe, and today I want to talk about a tier list for Escalation. I want to talk about the weapons, which ones I think are good, and which ones I think are fun. So I want to compare those two features of weapons, their enjoyment and their versatility and just, usefulness in Escalation, and see where they rank in my opinion. This is strictly going to be what I think. If you don't agree, that's fine. But I'm going to be curious what you guys think in the comments, so if you have like different tier lists of your own, feel free to share it. But to get started, my first weapon, the best weapon I think in Escalation is going to be Chain Blades, and I think this because they are insanely mobile, very evasive. They do some good damage for having those two qualities, and they are very easy to interrupt slash boop with. These are some really good qualities to have in Escalation because in Escalation you have dual hunts. It's kind of hard to handle these on some weapons. Like if you don't have stamina, you can't dodge. Chain Blades don't need stamina to dodge, so if you don't have stamina, you can still not get bodied because you have the ability to use Reaper's Dance, which is very, very strong. And Chain Blades are also good on most behemoths, pretty much all of them. The exception is going to be Rockfall Skarn, but even then it can do pretty well. But here's the thing though, Chain Blades also do well on Malkarian, which not every weapon does, and that's really important to have a weapon that works really well on Malkarian, because if it doesn't, it loses a lot of points in my eyes. But overall, Chain Blades are fun to play in Escalation. They do a really good job, and they get some of the fastest kill times. And on top of all that, they have crit chance. They have a crit chance modifier called Serrated Blades, and this Escalation, which is Season 1 of Escalation, also the Shock Escalation, is based on crits. There's a modifier called Violent Impact, and I'll bring this up a couple times in this video, but this is the best amplifier you can get in Escalation, and it works well with crits. Like, very well, it's how it works, is off of crits. So, weapons that work well with crits are going to do really well if you get this modifier, but Chain Blades don't need to pop off, but if they get it, then they do some insane work. So Chain Blades are good for that reason, and that's sort of my explanation behind that. Now the next weapon I'm going to rate in this tier list is kind of a hard choice because there are multiple different weapons that I do enjoy, but I think my favorite one is going to be Sword. And I'm picking Sword just because it's maintained its flashiness for a while for me, and I've played this weapon for a long time in Dauntless. Not consistently, but I still enjoy it a lot, and it has a similar mechanic like Chain Blades that make it really good. And that's going to be the ability to dodge without using stamina. And this is done using a special called Avenging Overdrive. So pretty much because of Avenging Overdrive, I rate this weapon very highly. Very, very, very strong in Escalation, and it does a really good job. There are some stronger weapons, but overall, in terms of enjoyment, and in terms of being able to play the game and just like feel cool playing it, this gets a really high rating for those kind of reasons. And outside of all that, if you guys use a exotic helmet called Skullforge, you will have pretty much infinite stamina as long as you're doing damage, and that can make the sword do some really crazy damage, and it's just a neat thing to do. Which, by the way, Skullforge is good on most of the weapons, if not all the weapons, for different reasons. But for the sword, it pops off really hard. And I just think that it does a really good job in Escalation. It handles dual behemoth hunts really well, which is really important because I think the very hardest round in Escalation is going to be round 4 of Escalation 10 through 50. That is the hardest round. So if you want a weapon that can handle that consistently, so Chain Blades and Sword can do that, and in this case, I rate Sword second for those kind of reasons. And it also has good damage output, and it just feels fun to play. So those are some reasons why I rate it those are some reasons why I rate it so high. Now the next weapon I have is going to be the Axe. And this is a weapon that I don't think is that fantastic solo. It's still fun, but solo is not where it really shines. It does really well in a group though. Like in a group aspect, the Axe can do really well because here's where it's going to be a bit different, but it does still have the ability to, it doesn't get an iframe, but it has the ability to tank damage without getting knocked back, because getting knocked back in Dauntless slows down the pace of the game and makes it kind of whack. So an iframe is the ability to dodge an attack entirely and still do some things. So like the Chain Blades have the ability to do that, the Sword does. The Axe has a similar ability, but you can't exactly dodge the damage. You can dodge the knockback, but you won't dodge the damage. Instead, you'll resolve the attack and keep swinging. So the gameplay stays really fast paced, and that's really fun to do. So this is a mechanic that makes the Axe a lot of fun to play in Escalation, and it's just a good time to mess with in general. And you also have a really, really strong damage hit from your specials, which makes it a pretty good time as well. So because of the ability to resolve attacks, I rate this Axe in this spot. It's fun to use in groups, it's just enjoyable overall, and it's a nice little thing to use. But keep in mind, to use it like this, to use it to where you're taking damage like that, you want to have Iceborne. That's like the thing. Like to make it work really well like that, you want to have Iceborne. So that's sort of how that's gonna go. And then my fourth weapon, which this is a close tie. This is like a close runner-up to third place, and it might actually overtake it. It depends. Like this tier list can obviously change at a pretty fast pace, but for right now, I would rate the fourth weapon as the Warpike. And I'm doing this because the Warpike is a lot of fun to play, although it doesn't do that much damage, but it is enjoyable to play. Like it's a lot of fun to mess around with. There are some specials and modifiers you can get from the trial store to make it even more fun to play, such as the Reckless Sleep special and the Executioner Spearhead modifier. So the Reckless Sleep special makes it just feel really cool. Like you have a lot of mobility on the Warpike. It's not super safe, which is why it's called Reckless. Like it actually makes sense why it's called Reckless, because it's not a safe special to use, but it's a lot of fun, and it does pack some pretty good damage for the Warpike. Like, look at the Warpike, it does some pretty good damage for what the weapon is. And the modifier, though, is called Executioner Spearhead. This gives you 6% damage for each wound you create, up to 10 wounds, aka 10 stacks. So you can get a total of 60% damage in Escalation, making the Warpike do as much damage as a regular weapon, which is fantastic. You love to see it. So overall, the Warpike is fun to use in Escalation. You can do some really cool, like interesting interrupts, which makes it that much more fun. Like you can mess around in Escalation. If you're farming Escalation, I wouldn't exactly choose this if you're new to Warpike, because it can be kind of rough to handle dual behemoth hunts. If you're in a group and your teammates are really good, then it's not that big a deal. If you're solo, it can be kind of difficult, so play it at your own risk. But the next weapon, or the fifth weapon, is going to be the Strikers. And these are only being placed this high because they do so much damage. That's the only reason. Like, they're a lot of fun to play, but I think that they're really strong against one behemoth. When you mix in two behemoths in the mix, when you mix in another behemoth and you're fighting two at the same time, it can be kind of hard to manage both of them at the same time. It's really hard to just handle that kind of thing. But overall, it's still a solid weapon to take to Escalation, but I do not like this weapon on Malkarian. I simply do not like it. It's not very fun. It's not enjoyable for me. It kind of ruins the whole flow. Like once I get to that boss, I'm just like, well, I guess I won't be playing the game anymore. It's just not that fun. Like you have freaking T-Rex arms. You can't hit anything, bro. You can try, but you ain't got the reach. So I'm rating this low just because it doesn't perform on Malkarian, and it does okay in dual behemoth hunts. It's just not the most enjoyable. Like I like weapons that have iframes on top of they're just their dodges. Like you have your dodge, and you also have another ability you can use to dodge with, which is kind of cool. Now, the next weapon I'm gonna go ahead and say is gonna be Twin Suns, but there's a pretty big but, like like pretty big, and that's gonna be this weapon. The Twin Suns is only good if you get virulent impact. Like that modifier, like that amplifier is really good in Escalation. If you get that, Twin Suns do some insane work. If you don't get that, don't play these weapons. Like it's really rough. Like they're very RNG dependent, but once you do get that RNG to work in your favor, they're a lot of fun. So that kind of like, it puts them not in last place, but really close to it, because they're super RNG dependent, but once you go past the RNG, it's really fun to play. And on top of having the RNG of getting that amplifier, it's also RNG on the behemoths you're facing, because some behemoths make Twin Suns feel fantastic to play, and other behemoths make them feel really sluggish and kind of boring. So if you like them, you'll like them for the majority of Escalation, but not on everything. So it's a nice thing to play. It's a nice change of pace to play, and I do recommend them if you haven't played them already, because it is fun to play with them, especially once you get Violent Impact unlocked in your amp tree. You can pick that and hopefully get it and pop off. But going to the last weapon in this tier list, I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be the Hammer for me. The Hammer it's a weapon that relies super heavily on doing your Aether Slams, which, by the way, apparently Aether Slams do the same amount of damage. Like each tick of your Aether Slam, like each shell from your Aether Slam does the same amount of damage as a prime swing from the Hammer. So the two can be interchanged kinda, although it's much faster to just unload all your shells in Aether Slam if you can manage to get the combo off, which is very hard to do if you're in a dual behemoth hunt, because there's two freaking gangly looking monsters trying to make your day not very great. So the Hammer just doesn't have very good ways to handle that, and for that kind of reason, I'm just not really digging it. It's a nice weapon if you want to like support your teammates, and it's kind of interesting in dual in like a duo aspect, but I don't like it solo, and I'm not a big fan of it in the 4-man. In a duo, it's kind of interesting, but even then, I might just take strikers just because I do more damage and I'd have more fun myself. So, if you like the hammer, by all means play it. Which, by the way, this is simply my opinion on the weapons and Dauntless for Escalation. If you guys disagree, that is fine. In fact, I kind of hope you guys have your own ideas of what you like in this mode, because it's important. It's important that you guys figure out what you like and you play it. Like, I'm just giving my opinion right here, and that's what the tier list is all about. But hopefully you guys, you know, learn some stuff that you might not have known, and just inspired some thinking of your own on what you like in Dauntless and why you like it. Because for me, I really like the ability to dodge attacks without using stamina. Having 2 dodges is really important to me. That's why I rated Chain Blades and Sword as number 1 and number 2. They have that ability, and they are also a solid weapon all around. Like, I rated Twin Suns kind of low because it just doesn't have the ability to interrupt, and the cell slots when it appears aren't that great. So it's kind of like why it's super low. And also, when you're not dodging attacks with your dash, you're just holding left click all the time, which is kind of boring. But that's sort of like why I did all that stuff, and that's sort of my ratings. So this tier list was basically, it was, rating enjoyment and versatility, I guess, or usefulness, rating those kind of things. And that's sort of how I came to all these decisions. But anyway, y'all, hopefully you guys liked it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff helps the channel a lot. And if you guys are shopping in the Epic Game Store, make sure, if you want, to use my Epic Game Store code, which is OhDough, and that helps me out by just making purchases. If you make purchases, you have my code, I get a small kickback, and it's very, very helpful. So thank you all for doing that, and thank you all again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.